The little marigolds that have been grown.
And I always like to call it aubergine, not necessarily because the name is more accurate, just because it's kind of fun to say. Today we're going to do roasted corn salad, but I'm going to cook the corn a little bit differently than most of us usually do. Most of us boil it, we microwave it, or we grill it. Today I'm going to talk about cooking it in the oven. So you're going to start with about 4 large ears of corn. Now I would probably either pull off or cut off the silk that comes off the top, simply because you don't want it dangling down in your oven. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Check your corn over, kind of peek in there, make sure that you don't see an insect crawling around in there. You don't want to roast that. Then wash it off. Not really going to be washing anything off the corn, but you want to get the outside wet because what's going to happen in the oven, we're going to put it in the oven right on the rack at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. And what's going to happen, because we have the moisture that's in, or the water inside the corn itself, plus the water that you have on because you've rinsed it off, and that's going to steam the corn itself. So 30 minutes, 350, then you're just going to let that cool. Now once it gets cool, you're going to find that because it's been cooked, the silk comes off much easier than if you've been assigned to desilking corn and husking corn to get it ready to go into a boiling pot of water. So that saves you a lot of effort in that regard as well. Then you're simply going to remove the corn from the cob by cutting it down one side, and there are lots of methods people have to do this. I like to put a small cutting board inside of a 9x13 pan, and that way it catches it, because as you can see it's flying everywhere, and that just seems to keep the place a little bit cleaner for me as I do this. And you want to cut it off as much as you can without going too deep, because you don't actually want to get the cob, nor do you need to scrape the side of it down. We're not going for milkiness the way you do when you're doing cream corn. You need about 4 ears, as I mentioned. Those are going to go into our pot, and we'll proceed from there to our bowl. This is already cooked. Everything else is either going to be raw or it's coming out of a can. I've got a 15-ounce can of low sodium, reduced sodium, no salt added kidney beans. Make sure you rinse those well and drain them a couple of times just to make sure everything is off. To that I'm going to add ½ cup of chopped bell pepper. I'm using green. If you have other colors, you could use them. The green bounces off the other colors that we have here. I've got 2 medium tomatoes and about 4 green onions. So we have a lot of color in here that adds a lot of interest to this. I'm going to stir it. Now remember, because the tomatoes and the beans are somewhat soft and delicate, you don't want to stir too vigorously. Plus we don't really need to. We're just blending flavors. To this also I'm going to combine a ½ teaspoon to 3/4 of a teaspoon, depending on how daring you are, of either chili powder or a chipotle chili powder. Again, it's a salad, so you have a little bit of flexibility. And then to keep the fat content of our dish low, I've got a ½ cup of non-fat Italian dressing. You could use non-fat French dressing. If you don't like the non-fat versions, you can use a reduced fat version. And if you don't care either way, I suppose you could use a regular dressing to this. But either French or Italian works fairly well. See if we can get that powder out of there and blend it in a little bit better. And then we're simply going to blend those together. Now, because we've got a lot of flavors going in here that haven't met before, it's a good idea if you make this up about an hour ahead of time. You could make it up earlier than that. However, what we have here is a vegetable or a couple of vegetables that have chlorophyll in them, which means that they've got the green, and when the acid from the dressing comes in contact with that green, it's going to start dulling it, particularly around the edges. So if you don't have to make it up way ahead of time, the first time you eat it at least, I wouldn't. I'd pretty much save it for an hour ahead of time, and that gives time for the flavors to blend, but not time for the colors to dull. Now you could serve this just as a side dish, but I'm going to serve it on some lettuce wedges here. And because we have the grain and we have the beans, this could, if you chose, be a luncheon dish or a main dish in an evening meal, a light summer meal when it's a little bit hot outside and appetites aren't what they might be at other times of the year. I hope you'll give this one a try. At least try roasting the corn this way and see if you like it. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown, and this is Roasted Corn Salad.